Autism. This very rarely used word means the discrimination against those who are deaf or hard of hearing. This is what caused the oppression of the deaf people in the 19th and 20th century that many don't know about. Hi, my name is Erin, and I'll be informing you guys on the history of deaf culture here in America. So learning about the deaf communities, it really helped me understand and realize that they too have a culture and a history of their own that I would like to share with you guys. So first, I'll be talking about deaf schools. Second will be the National Association of the Deaf. And lastly, I'll be talking about the deaf communities today. So today, American Sign Language is actually a language class in many different high schools and colleges across the United States, but it wasn't always like that. ASL was actually strongly looked down upon. And so in the 19th century, many people believed that those who were born deaf could not be educated. This was until 1817 when a man named Thomas Gallaudet came to America with his friend Laurent Clerc from France here to the United States, and they actually opened up the first school for the deaf. Laurent Clerc, he was the only teacher there with his 7 students, and he would strictly teach them using sign. And so he noticed his students doing some sign of their own, and so what they did was they combined his French Sign Language along with his student sign language, and that made American Sign Language today. And so while many appreciate the use of sign language and the ability to communicate, a man named Alexander Graham Bell, who actually invented the telephone, believed that deaf people were actually better off using their voices rather than signing. So according to a video called Through Deaf Eyes, in the late 1860s, schools actually began prohibiting the use of sign language and forced them to use their voices by generating sounds, mimicking mouth shapes, and breathing patterns. So as you can imagine, this was extremely difficult for the students because they were stripped of their natural language and they were being forced to use something that they've never used before. So this is actually a perfect example of autism, and not only was it going on in the schools but also in the workforce as well. And this is what caused a group of deaf people to come together and form an organization to protect themselves against that kind of discrimination. So the National Association of the Deaf was founded in 1880 by, like I said, a group of deaf people. But 26 years later, in 1906, the government actually stated that they will no longer be hiring deaf workers to work for the government. This actually worried the deaf community because they thought that other rights would be stripped away from them, such as marriage, due to Alexander Bell's idea of eugenics, meaning just being in a perfect world, no deaf people. And so, according to the NAD website, in 1910, the U.S. President William Howard Taft informed the NAD that he instructed the Federal Civil Service Commission to remove all discriminatory barriers to federal employment of deaf workers. And so this is huge because this was something that they've been protesting for years. And so thanks to the NAD, the idea of eugenics isn't nearly as common anymore, and they are continually improving the everyday life of those who are deaf and hard of hearing, which leads me to the deaf communities today. So according to this article, Embodiment, Linguistic Space, American Sign Language Meets Geography, it states that while ASL has a rich history dating back to the early 19th century, it was not studied academically until Stokoe effectively proved that ASL was a natural language in 1960. And so this this is huge also because 100 years later, the deaf community is actually finally being recognized. And so, unfortunately, the article, A Place of Their Own in History, states that the frequency of deaf births is actually declining dramatically from the historical rates due to the near ubiquity of vaccinations against viruses and the use of antibiotics, and that bioengineering threatens the future of genetic deafness. So, deaf people do not wish to change anything about themselves, so why would the normal hearing person wish to change anything about them? And so, according to the video Through the Deaf Eyes, deaf people are actually very happy, and they do not wish to be hearing. They don't wish to have that hearing sense. So they can essentially do everything that a normal hearing person can do, besides talking on the phone, which is easily fixed through texting. And so overall, the deaf community is very grateful to share their rights with every other American, and that they're still able to form groups and events for each other to come together and to socialize and network. So I've gone over first the deaf education in the 19th century, second the NAD, and third, deaf communities today. And so all throughout history, people have been trying to fix the deafness, or even just get rid of them completely, but by them sticking together and forming organizations, it really helped them overcome those tough times of oppression. Thank you.